do you think the IMF ruling in El Salvador is flash in the pan, or something that is going to form a longer theme as part of Bitcoin's story in El Salvador?
They want Jeff Booth in the thumbnail. They want Jack Mallers in the thumbnail. They want Michael Saylor in the thumbnail. They want 0.1 BTC will buy you a Lambo. Like, they want that stuff. There's nothing wrong with it. You can use that as a bait and then move the conversation or whatever content in a different direction.
Yeah.
But in terms of psychologically what Bitcoiners want, honestly, sometimes I feel like we're a little insecure. You know how everyone chirps, Ripple and Greenpeace for spending $5 million on their anti-Bitcoin campaign?
Change the code, baby.
Money well spent. You couldn't generate that amount of press and the amount of time that they sucked out of Bitcoiners for $5 million in any other context.
The following discussion is with Julian Figueroa, a rather genius documentary maker and the co-founder of Getbased TV. The conversation is a look behind the curtain of what it's really like to make Bitcoin content and documentaries, as well as some of the dark and unhealthy sides of being a public face in a space that values privacy. Now, Julian is from El Salvador. No, he's not. He's from Canada. But we had this discussion in El Salvador in Mike Peterson's wonderful Bitcoin Beach studio. Thank you very much, Mike. I would like to thank BitKit for making this conversation possible. BitKit is a mini lightning node in your pocket. Check them out. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm looking forward to this. We're going to get into a lot of stuff. I did prepare a lot of questions. However, I do want us to have a nice chat, because one of the things we said yesterday over dinner is we don't get enough one-on-one time. So I thought, okay, this is also an excuse to have one-on-one time.
This is the curse of being a Bitcoiner, is we all live in different pockets of the world, and these conventions and conferences, they go by way too quick for the one-on-ones. So
for people that don't know you, you're of course like the co-founder of Getbased, which is on the TV next to us. But I sort of first stumbled across your content through a couple of touch points. One of them was this really good deep dive into Michael Saylor. Another one was in a cabin in the woods sort of financy video thing.
Yeah.
And then the other one was a really funny one, because I used to follow this guy quite religiously when I was like really into finance bro stuff. And it was probably a side of myself I shouldn't share publicly. But there's this guy called Graham Stefan. You know where this is going, right?
Yeah, you shit on me for buying land.
Say again?
He shit on me for buying land because it doesn't produce cash flow. Which, by the way, it's so funny. I was actually just talking about this with my girlfriend Makiko the other day. He was crapping on me because it doesn't produce any it doesn't produce like cash flow, whatever. The price of that land, not the flex, has doubled according to the assessment value. I didn't have to do anything on it. Now, it hasn't outperformed Bitcoin. That land, I did sell Bitcoin to acquire, so that wasn't a great, Sats denominated purchase, but. Graham Stefan, suck it. I bet your freaking LA house isn't doing too well right now.
Ouch. But
sorry, I didn't mean that to the people in LA. But
no, of course. But for people who aren't in the know, he has a massive finance YouTube channel.
Yeah.
But he's all about traditional sort of tech finance boy investments. S&P 500 real estate is to an extent a shitcoin unless it's generating a income through like letting out or whatever. And you rang in and basically said, I had like a load of Ethereum, a load of Bitcoin, sorry, trigger warning, Ethereum, had a load of Ethereum and Bitcoin, and I sold them all to buy this house. And this was what, 2018, 2019?
Yeah, 2018, yeah.
And he was basically like, Julian, here's what you need to do.
Yeah.
And like fully like, and look at you now and look at him now.
Yeah, I'm sure he's doing terribly right now.
Was he actually affected by the fires?
I don't know. That was a bad joke. I make bad jokes. That's one of my things. I make inappropriate jokes, and I realized, probably shouldn't have said that. But you know what? You work on it. The thing is if I try and self-filter too much, then I just come off bland. So I'll let the bad ones squeak by in service of the good jokes I make every now and then.
What a perfect segue into my first question, which was all about your content creation in general, because you have a real knack of making shorts in particular go mega viral. You were showing me the other day that one of your shorts on TikTok's got over 1 million views now. Is that right?
I have one that just broke 11 million on TikTok.
I mean, what on earth? Like, that is mad. So is it just a question of make a load of jokes, some will be bad, some will be good, some will get cancelled, some will get censored, and one of them eventually will stick to the wall, and, go mega viral? Like, what is the trick here? What's the secret sauce to making these mega viral Bitcoin clips?
There's a bunch of components of the secret sauce. In terms of the writing aspect of it, I think number one, what you're saying should be true. A true fact that people have to wrap their heads around or disagree with you on, but still have to defend why they disagree with you on it. The other secret sauce is it should be current. I think the ones that have gone pretty big have just somehow come out at the right time. When I do shorts, I usually record them I try and do a bundle at a time, 4 or 5 at a time, shoot them, put them out. Because of that, I don't try and chase events. I try and chase themes that are kind of happening in the culture. For instance, when the election is happening and when things are going on in Canada with our crazy politics, I don't call out a specific day that something happened or a specific event. I call out just, a cultural joke about Trudeau or a cultural joke about Trump. It's relevant to the week and the month and the 3-month period, but it's not relevant to the day. Mm-hmm. If you do that, you either have to have really fast turnaround where you're constantly churning out scripts and good content, or you're going to put out stuff that as soon as you publish it, it's already irrelevant because that story has gone into the ether. And I think that's one of the most challenging parts about making content about finance, Bitcoin, is being able to figure out what is a flash in the pan story and what is like a theme that's going to linger with people for a little bit of, a longer conversation and keep coming up.
Yeah. Can I jump in there and just ask, do you think the IMF ruling in El Salvador is flash in the pan or something that is going to form a longer theme as part of Bitcoin's story in El Salvador?
This is really interesting because I think a lot of people came to El Salvador because of that law, because they knew that they had some sort of legal protection to run their Bitcoin-based business. I don't know the extent of which they're repealing it, but maybe you know a bit more. My understanding of it is that it's no longer officially deemed legal tender, thereby you're not forced to accept it at your store. And then they're going to be decommissioning or trying to sell or change Chivo Wallet to more of a private entity rather than a government-held one. Beyond that, I still think it's capital gains exempt. If you want to use it as a currency, then you're pretty much still good to go. If you want to voluntarily accept it and pay your employees in it, I'm pretty sure you're still allowed to do that under the guise of the government. And the government collects sales tax on all the Bitcoin purchases for stores. I still think that is still in effect. It's more of like a mantra thing, and I've seen on Twitter that there's been a lot of debate over if this kills Bitcoin country. And that was, I came down here originally to film. I was in El Salvador in 2021, and I filmed, within the first 2 months, what is Bitcoin country like? What was the adoption like 2 months in?
Yep.
And it felt very, very early. I come back, and 2 days into me coming back, my original plan was to say, what is it 3 years in? And then this thing with the IMF happened, and it's no longer legal tender. So all of a sudden, the focus of the documentary I was making shifted towards, do we need the government to tell us it's Bitcoin country, or is it the people that have made this Bitcoin country? And I think pretty firmly, yes, the people have made it Bitcoin country. The question is are people going to come to El Salvador at the same clip that they were while the Bitcoin law was still in effect? That's a question I'm still trying to figure out for myself. I honestly think it's a perception thing more than anything. What you're doing with your docs, what I'm doing with mine, probably have some pretty massive impact when people make decisions on whether or not to uproot themselves and move down here.
It's quite a surreal responsibility. I had someone at the hardware store. I mean, I think you visited today. I was there yesterday and just chatting to people coming in. I ended up doing a peer-to-peer trade, or someone who wasn't me ended up selling some Bitcoin for some cash because I had to pay my homestay. As you know, El Zonte, there is massive penetration of Bitcoin, but there are certain things that still don't accept, and there are always going to be laggards. And I think that's another thing that people just don't understand about Bitcoin country, and then particularly Bitcoin beach, is that you don't have anywhere near, 80% merchant adoption, let alone, the 100% that people like to go for. But when I was in this hardware store, a guy came up to me and was like, "Oh yeah, man, like your El Salvador thing in 2022 was like one of the reasons why I came and moved here."
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's an actual physical touch point for the work that we do, creating documentaries and stories. But at the same time, we're just trying to discover, right? We're just trying to learn about it as well. The funny thing there you said about the IMF and Bitcoin, killing Bitcoin here, the title of the video I'm working on right now is, "Did the IMF just kill Bitcoin in El Salvador?"
Yeah.
And I don't think it did, because it's already reached it's not a critical mass, but it's certainly enough to drive it forward. And there's now enough expats coupled with enough local Salvadorans to hopefully snowball more and more. But the optics aren't great, and the trust in government isn't great. I'm actually like relatively pro-state compared to a lot of Bitcoiners, but we did put way too much, or the Bitcoin community as a whole put way too much trust in this one man and his magic wand when it comes to Bitcoin in El Salvador. Do you want to keep talking on this, or can I ask you some random stuff?
No, I'll just say to close that out. Look, it's weird. You probably get it. You show up at these Bitcoin conferences and you look at your YouTube's like 7,000 subs, 21,000 subs. Like, this is nothing compared to other niches. Video games, finance, news, politics. This is like, you're not even on the map.
Yeah.
These numbers, 4 to 5 digits, like, the amount of people that we run into who recognize us at conferences from a short or a documentary is unreal. Like I went to this conference. It had what, 2,000, 3,000 people. I have 20,000 followers on this YouTube. 100 of them happen to be at that event. At least 100 people pulled me over. I imagine more for you. Then look at the ratio that, I mean, you have a different size for the Twitter following, but it's like these Bitcoiners are tuned into what we're saying, and there is a massive responsibility in terms of, we're not being asked to endorse or to, not endorse a certain country, but the stuff that we do has a really big impact on people's major life decisions and how they're going to uproot themselves, because these stories that we do, it's kind of a time capsule. It's a person capsule of where a place is and where the people are at a certain point of time. And so, as much as we want to go in there, we want to be objective journalists, or we want to tell this like really personal story, we don't get to control what people take out of it. And people watch our stuff, and they make some pretty massive decisions based on the vibe that we create in the editing room on this a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's super interesting you say that. And at the same time, I always shy away from trying to think that way because I get so worried about the outcome. Like, what if, I'm always just what-ifing in my head. Like, okay, what if they do move to El Salvador and it's the worst thing they ever did? And, this guy that I met in the hardware store was grateful, which is awesome. But I wonder, by that same token, if there are other people who have also made poor decisions based on the videos I've done. So I just don't even like to
Well, you know what the good thing is? The good thing is that Bitcoiners are responsibility maxis.
That's true. Sovereignty maxis.
Now, I've heard Bitcoiners do like to blame the government for everything sometimes, a little more than themselves sometimes. But in general, when a Bitcoiner makes a decision like this, I'm going to uproot myself. I don't think you're ever going to find one that'll say, Joe made this propaganda video and he said this place was amazing, or he said it was terrible and I went there and I wasted all this time. You're not going to get that from Bitcoiners.
Actually, you're right. I mean, coming back to the core, if I can encourage people to travel and to explore the world and to look at it a little bit differently and to walk in someone else's shoes, then, job done. I can be proud of that.
Remember the statistic, at least the one I saw. 24% of us are INTJs. Introverted, very logic-centered. Yeah, if you look at like a split, some guy did statistics on 500 Bitcoiners, and they mapped their Myers-Briggs personality types from the general populace versus Bitcoiners. Heavy introversion. It was either INTJ or INFP is like 50%. Just those two quadrants are 50% of all Bitcoiners. Very similar in how they do logic processing. And how they are with crowds of people, and I'm lumped in there with like the other ones. But what that means is that you get a lot of crossover in terms of value sets, which is kind of interesting.
Okay. Yeah. Have you done those Myers-Briggs tests?
Yeah.
Did you turn up? You didn't turn up INTJ, did you?
I'm INTJ. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought that based on your content and your sort of. I mean, INTJ, I associate it with like mega introverts and.
No. Like it's a spectrum. So like you're just on either the side of E or I, and it tells you when you take tests like how far introverted you are versus extroverted.
Okay.
I'm probably what I would say an ambivert, where I get energy from both.
Yeah.
But technically prefer introversion as a default state, right?
Yeah,
Default state, I have to create my own energy versus get it from other people.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'd probably describe myself as an extroverted introvert. But that, I love being by myself and I'm much happier. And, I was saying to you the other day, when doing these projects, I'm intentionally trying to avoid traveling with other Bitcoiners, partially because I want to do the job properly and I want to actually do journalism. I want to arrive in Berlin tomorrow and I've only told one person, So then I can test out places, I can work out if, all these rumors are true that Bitcoin is this amazing circular economy. But there's also the other side to it, which is like traveling with a load of other people is absolutely knackering. And the energy that there's an expectation as a content creator that you're then going to create content in that group setting. And sometimes you're like, dude, I've been on stage for the past 3 days. I am spent. I cannot give any more. And I just need to rest. And there's a lull in the conversation, or there's, something going on. It's like, oh, you need to jump in on this. It's like, dude, I'm done. Can I go back to being an introvert now, please? Yeah. But the media thing that you brought up as well is that, I forget that in this post MSM world, people are consuming Bitcoin media at a far higher rate than they are any other media. And so, you're right. They are completely switched on to what we're doing. And they could probably tell you where like Isabella is right now in the world. They could probably tell you the current thing in the Bitcoin space, as well as the Bitcoin price, probably the nearest block within 100, what the difficulty adjustment is, what hash price is doing, all these things, as well as within that, the journos, the content creators, the influencers that are helping this media machine turn. So yeah, I forget that. Yeah, it's true. Like 7,000 subscribers, it is paltry compared to most actual, content creators and journos. But within this space, it's heavy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I've done work with other YouTube channels before, and you can see analytics. Like, I'll just break down some basics. The average YouTube video that goes online, there's an average view duration. So if you post a 10-minute video on YouTube, you let it sit there for a day, YouTube will tell you, on average, a viewer watched it for 2 to 3 minutes. It's about 25% of the video.
Okay.
YouTube also tells you click-through rate, right? That's our golden number as creators. We want to make sure that we have a nice title, a nice thumbnail, make sure that most people that see that, click it, watch it, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the views themselves, and view curves look different. A lot of videos, they get the first 90% of the views in the first 48 hours, and they kind of curve off. Some videos have a slow bleed upwards. And so I've seen content from other content creators that are not in the space, and I've seen content from Bitcoin creators. And there's one thing that I've seen consistently with Bitcoin creators, which is that we will have a proportionally lower subscriber count than the average amount of views that we get on our videos.
Dude, this is me for every,
Yeah, right? You have 7,000 subs, but you put out video after video that is getting 10,000 views or more, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Most YouTubers...
And it's so frustrating. Why do they bloody click subscribe? I think it's because a lot of them are not watching on YouTube per se, or they're watching on another, or they're not doxing their account because they hate Google, or they hate...
A couple of reasons. YouTube on TV, for example, it's a little bit, like, from a UX perspective, harder to subscribe after you've watched a random video. It just kind of throws into a playlist. If you're watching on mobile or computer, if I say, hey, like and subscribe, it's easier for you to do that than if you're watching on a TV.
Sure.
And I think TV viewership is the highest growing side of YouTube viewership now. Mobile views kind of peaked a few years ago. PC views have been kind of bleeding out as everyone kind of moves to mobile. But now the next big thing is, look, I can't afford $25 for Netflix and $20 for Prime and all this stuff. YouTube, I get no ads, and then I also get the music thing for free. They have the most compelling. They're the only streaming service in the last 2 years that has actually, It was grown by double digits in North America. Mm-hmm. All the other ones are kind of starting to go back to 5-10% growth, or are sort of peaking. They also are the only streaming service that has an increasing higher amount of time spent per user per day on it. So Netflix a few years ago,
terrifying stat.
Yeah, the average Netflix watcher peaked at around, 3 hours a day or something, and that's been going down. Prime, down. Disney, way down. YouTube, up. People are consuming more and more YouTube as part of their media consumption diet than any other streaming service out there.
Wow.
So we're in a good place in terms of people's attention. Mm-hmm. The challenge is that we have these subscribers that are all probably diehard Bitcoiners. And when we get 7,000 subs and 10,000 views, it means that there's a lot of people that are not subscribed that are watching. We don't know if they're Bitcoiners or not. And so the question is number one, how do we actually get them orange pilled through this journey of the content that we're creating? But number two is, how do we create a community around the ethos and the values of the content that we're making too, so that they're not just there just because we're the hot thing because the price is at 100K, and that we're actually creating, changes in people's minds and attitudes as it comes to hard money, as it comes to hard economics, and as it comes to hard bodies and being sovereign. That's been the biggest challenge for me, is figuring out, as we grow, as we get views, how do we turn those people, from passive consumers to producers of the world they want to live in.
I want to get onto that, and because obviously Getbased is all about sovereignty and helping more and more people unlock sovereignty.
Yeah.
But just a note on, YouTube is growing dramatically, and I found even with my own personal uses, like only last year I upgraded to YouTube Premium, and it did genuinely change my life. It's one of those things.
How much time you save from the ads? I mean, I don't know how much. So how much on average per day YouTube do you watch?
I'd probably just ask screen time, but I reckon it depends what I'm doing. Like if I'm traveling like this, then it's probably 10 minutes, and it'll be just to go check one thing, like one subscriber I really want to watch. Yeah. But if it's like for a journey, for a flight, I never use the in-flight entertainment. It's always YouTube on my phone. You
pre-download the videos, then
everything.
Watch them? Yeah.
Dude, I had to clean out everything recently because I had so many downloaded. Yeah. And then only recently I've started watching YouTube at home, but with YouTube Music on a TV.
Yeah.
And that's, again, just a thing where, got nicer speakers, so it plays out through there. And, But I see what you mean about how a lot of people find my content by typing in Joe Nakamoto X, whatever X is, and then they send me a photo of them watching on their TV at home. And that I also find really just like it's a really cute message to receive. Like another guy that I met in Gibraltar 3 years ago did this recently. But there's a fire underneath his TV and he's like just catching up with the missus on your content. And I'm like, wow, it's so
humbling.
It's incredible. I was smiling for days. And then you know, and he's doing it because it's helping his girlfriend share in his passion of Bitcoin. And I'm like, that is just brilliant. I want to do more of that. I want more men to sit down. I know this sounds awful out of context, but whatever. You want more men to sit down with their other halves and be like, hey, this is a thing I'm passionate about. And this guy's going to talk about it and show us some travel content, some lifestyle stuff, very similar to your content as well, that you can both enjoy and be like, I'm not weird by having this bizarre obsession, you know, and breaking down those walls. So it was a great moment.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but I mean, you've probably had that a few times, you know. Those
I've
kind of messages.
I've gotten a couple photos. I think the thing that's tricky is I'm a person who just gets bored of formats.
Okay.
And so I'll be on a kick and people will be like, can you do one on this circular economy and that one? And as soon as people start like picking out a type of thing that I do, I just run in the opposite direction. So like what I love about your content is you're bringing the same Joe to everything. I'm like a chameleon. I mean, you've seen the ones where I put on the wigs, and I've done the ones where I'm super ultra serious, you know, Dear Ross, like maybe not even one joke in that. And then the ones that are coming up.
I don't think there was there? If there was a joke, it was a dark joke.
It was super. And then, dude, this is the next doc. I don't know when this video is going to be out, but maybe by the time you're listening to this, I ate bugs for 30 days. Nothing to do with Bitcoin unless you want to connect, you know, fiat food with Bitcoin, which you can. But I never say the word Bitcoin in the whole doc. Yeah. Right. And so that's, to me, what makes it fun is I never get to be put in a box. But the problem is sometimes as viewers want consistency. Right.
That's all they want. They want to know what they're getting.
They want to know exactly what they're going to get month to month, week to week. And it's a tricky line to walk as a creator. You want to create what you love and you want to create what people love to watch. And every time I kind of find it for a second, all of a sudden what I want changes. And then I got to somehow pull everyone else over there, which is tricky.
Yeah, or you just go fully commercially minded and make what your audience wants and treat every second as a precious commodity of the audience's time.
They want Jeff Booth in the thumbnail. They want Jack Mallers in the thumbnail. They want Michael Saylor in the thumbnail. They want 0.1 BTC will buy you a Lambo. Like they want that stuff. There's nothing wrong with it. You can use that as a bait and then move the conversation or whatever content in a different direction. But in terms of psychologically what Bitcoiners want, honestly, sometimes I feel like we're a little insecure. It's like we need to be reminded daily, weekly, monthly that this thing is inevitable. And it sometimes I feel from some of the other creators I've talked to, they feel like they're being put in a box where they always seem to have to play therapist with like, this thing's going to $1 million, don't worry guys. And here's a bunch of new reasons I've come up with why this week. And here's my guest speaker who's also going to come up with new reasons why.
Well, that's why talking about price is just a trap, isn't it?
Because
once you start, you have to continue talking about price and do the sort of, I don't know what it is, like just it's basically a waltzer. You're just spinning around constantly talking about the same thing. So I think there is a lot of freedom. God, we're circle jerking hard here, aren't we, mate?
Well, but this is the thing, right? Is like that is super good content still, right? Like I watch experts break down how, you know, we're living in the matrix and having these one-on-one really deep, sometimes really emotional conversations. You can have all that amazing content with the wrapper of the clickbait title and thumbnail. That's totally fine. For me, it's just, I'm so antsy. I can't even sit here and do this podcast for, 2-3 hours. I got a jet set. I got to push myself. I want to do something that's not Bitcoin related. And so it's a struggle for me. I guess I'm like almost ADHD in the way that I like creating things. I like doing something brand new, fresh and challenging month to month, week to week.
Yeah, but that's a classic YouTuber trait as well. Yeah. Because YouTube does give you that freedom of expression to do whatever you want and rebrand and keep rebranding. Okay. Yeah. Do you want to talk about sovereignty? Because within that, you were saying of...
that's the consistent link I've found recently.
Okay, is that what's pulling it all together?
Yeah, I think so.
Because, within that sort of market of Bitcoiners, you're sort of suggesting that there's a little bit of insecurity. And I think that's true. Like, I have a price ticker on my phone, and when I just open it, and a friend, Santosh, was like, why do you have that? Just remove it. One BTC is one BTC. And I was like, it's true, but then there's a part of me that thinks that one day I'm going to open it and it'll be zero. It'll be like negative 100,000. And in the back brain will be like, I told you so. And I've since removed it and I'm much happier having removed it. And yet there is that tiny bit of insecurity. But then you have these amazing conversations with lots of Bitcoiners who are completely, fully sovereign. The guys that have moved to like Madeira, or the people that have moved here and they're doing everything off grid, or, they're living completely independently, but with a local community that's very strong and with like very strong social fabric where they are. So how do you sort of manage that battle between sort of convenience and insecurity and sovereignty and autonomy effectively?
Well, I think that's what it's all about, is just finding the balance, weighing the decisions that you make between sovereignty and convenience. And then you also have to think like, what is this word? Sovereignty. We all want it. You know, we
Mm-hmm.
all want self-custody. We all don't want to feel like we're reliant on the government in any, you know, way or shape or form. But
That's not a given.
it's not a given. And
No,
also,
like you
y'all
say
still have
that
to pay
in-
taxes, so maybe they do owe you something, right?
Well, you say that in the UK and you'll be labeled a raving right-wing sort of person. Like the word sovereignty is triggering to a lot of like my UK friends, and it's a thing that we forget. Like we're so far down this rabbit hole of questioning what government is and what our role is in society that we forget that for a lot of people that's quite alienating terminology, and it's, you know, it's not a given that we all want to be sovereign. I don't think a lot of people do want to be
No.
sovereign.
Look, you know the people who do want to be sovereign are the people who make the choice to not live in cities.
Live
And
in-
that's not live in cities.
Okay,
And
yeah.
that's billions and billions of people, right? Because there's so many places where living in a city is easier, right? Because you don't have to, you know, spend the money. You don't have to have a vehicle for a lot of cities, right? You don't have to know how to drive. You don't have to know how to, you know,
I
provide.
don't have a vehicle.
Yeah, you don't have to know how to provide, you know, your water and your food and all this stuff. Like, it's not easy to live outside of a city. This is what's frustrating sometimes is this conversation that Americans have about rural America, right? Like
Right.
these are country bumpkins or whatever, and they're dumb and they're throwing off, you know, our electorate and all this stuff. These are people that I think have taken the hard path. I think living in a city is easy, and I think it makes us soft. And there's nothing wrong with, you know, if you have made that as a choice, that's fine. Whether it's out of convenience, whether it's where your community is, whether you were born into it, that's fine. But living away from cities is difficult, but it's more primal. And I think it allows us to reflect on our humanity easier, from my experience. I find it very hard when you're in an apartment building to take a quick moment and think about what your principles are in life and what really makes you happy. When you're hearing sirens, and when you're hearing trains go by, and when you have screens and LED lights and all this crap all over the place. Like, you can't get to your humanity in most cities. The point of, you know, urban architecture is to try and bring a little bit of the outside in, so you don't feel like you're in a gray box all the time. But it's a spirit killer for creative people, I find. You know, creative people have to come to the city for opportunity, but I find over long periods of time, most creatives, they just burn out. They can't get in touch with nature. They can't get in touch with their soul. They don't have the space. They don't have the time. They don't have, you know, the right friend group typically in those places as well.
You're effectively describing me living in a city right now.
It's tough. And like, you know, I enjoy cities for a whole bunch of things. I love food from all around the world. You know, I would probably get bored, honestly, if I was on the carnivore diet or just growing stuff out of my garden all the time. I've lived like that a little bit before, and it's fun, but hey, sometimes I want sushi and Chinese food, right? I just don't eat it, you know, 24/7, but it's nice to have it. So ideally, I don't know where I was going with all this. I think sovereignty is one of those things that I think people should, at the very least, have the opportunity to experience living as sovereign as a life as possible for a week, like going to a summer camp. Because once you taste it, then you really have a better perspective of whether or not you enjoy the city. I'll give you a quick story. I've shared this, you know, in my videos, but
Yeah.
I grew up in BC, and BC is a very, you know, we've got a couple of main cities with Vancouver and Victoria, but other than that, it's a bunch of small towns. BC's main industry is lumber, and you know, gold mining was a big thing, and tourism for the most part. I grew up on these tiny little islands called the Gulf Islands that were essentially just tourism islands, but a lot of people there were hippies. And growing up, I was really close to that. I loved going out for long hikes, kayaking on the ocean, fishing, camping, all that sort of stuff. And eventually, when I went to university, I moved to the city, and I just felt this longing for nature that was really hard to fill. Now, thankfully, Vancouver is pretty close to the outdoors, so as long as you have a car, you're good to go. But one of my first purchases when I made a little bit of money with Bitcoin was property on an island. You can't escape your roots sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And so I bought 5 acres on an island, about 30 minutes, you know, boat ride away from Vancouver. There's nothing on it. There's no electricity. There's no town. It's completely off the grid. All there was a well. And, you know, my parents, my friends asked me, what's the plan? I said, well, I don't know. Like, I'll build a cabin. I'll maybe build a house there. Maybe it's just a summer cabin thing. And over the years, I've spent time learning how to do everything. I've learned carpentry, I've learned plumbing, I've learned a little bit about electrics to do a solar system. I have a Bitcoin miner out there that, heats the place and does some mining in the summer when there's excess sun. And I've just learned all these things that are super fulfilling, because every time you do a project like that with your hands or some landscaping, you have tangible proof of work instead of digital proof of work. And I think everybody needs that balance, especially creators in life. So I love that. But as I have gone through this Bitcoin journey, I realized what I really want to do with that space eventually is create an environment where I can give people a taste of sovereign living for a weekend, so that they can see that there are other opportunities out there. There's so many Bitcoiners that live, you might think that you've escaped the matrix in Bitcoin because you've learned about hard money, but you really haven't escaped the matrix if you've been living in a city your whole life and you rarely leave. And I'll even throw that over to suburbs as well. Everyone should experience homesteading. Everyone should experience getting their hands in dirt, hammering a nail, and maybe it's not for you at the end of the day, but there's a ton of people I've invited to show that side of life, and they love it, and it changes them forever.
Really?
Yeah.
It's also, thank you for sharing that vision, and I hope you do achieve that dream. That's a really lovely thing to aspire to. But at the same time, a lot of people live in cities because that was where they're born, that's where the opportunity is, and that's where they'll probably die as well. And they're never going to get a taste of that. There's an amazing sort of viral video by a British comic, and he interviewed black kids and white kids about stuff like, what do you put in your, can olive oil go in hair? And all the white kids were like, yeah, that's horrible. And all the black kids were like, yeah, of course. And it was just like a really funny sort of take on city living. But then one thing they said was, do you like to go to the countryside for long walks and a pub lunch? And a load of the white guys were like, yeah, of course, I love to do that. Yeah, me and Donald, we do that all the, not Donald, that's a weird thing to say, but me and, I don't know, what's the posh, Giles, we do that all the time. And then he asked some of the black kids the same thing, and they're like, what's the countryside, mate?
Yeah.
And it was just like, I was like, wow, like I forget that people living in London their whole lives would never ever leave London.
Yeah.
And so for them, one of the interviewers, there's a white guy and a black guy doing it. It's why they're sort of playing with, they literally say in the video, we're doing this sort of racist trope with this whole thing, but it's playful. And he explains to the kid, like the countryside is stuff like outside of like the M40 being like, a motorway that surrounds London. The point being, we are able to do that thanks to Bitcoin. We're able to do that because we have this financial privilege that comes with it. But for a lot of people, they'll never ever experience that. And that's it's not something we need to mitigate, but it's just something that, I don't know. We live in a very privileged world, in a very privileged space that gets even more privileged every 4 years. So I guess maybe I'm trying to tie this back to the question earlier. So how do you speak to those people? How do you make those city people less soft? When, how do you speak to them in their own terms and reach them where they're at, as opposed to reaching those people that do have the capacity or the means to try these kinds of things?
You tell stories, number one, but number two, I'll push back on this idea that people are like not privileged enough to be able to homestead, right? Like, the people who go on these journeys and start this, they always need a hand, every single one. Now, there's some people who don't want any outside help. Yeah. But the amount of opportunities and times, like the woofers, right?
I was just about to bring up woofing.
They'll buy a home and they'll be like, anybody from the city want to come? We'll put you up. We'll feed you. You'll have a place to stay, right? And you can learn some stuff and help out on the land. Like that opportunity is open for anyone who's willing to work hard, right? And if you live in a city, right, they'll pay your way. Fill out an email form, and if you actually want to do it, you can go do it. And people take up those opportunities all the time. Yeah. Now, the thing is there isn't like a very clear consensus way of doing that. You kind of, look for these things that show up on Craigslist or Facebook, and maybe there's a site or two that has a centralized, service of hooking up, those people with the workers. And I guess that's part of the challenge is how could you create that opportunity in a fun way? All I know is there is a thirst from city people. When a video of some kid making his own tiny house on the back of a trailer he got from scrap parts gets 50 to 100 million views, those aren't just a bunch of people already in the country homesteading watching that. Yeah. Those are people in the city who are thirsty for an experience like that, and they don't know where to begin.
Yeah, the classic one was during COVID. There were a lot of people that were, you probably saw them as well, the viral videos of people building a swimming pool in the Thai jungle from scratch.
Yeah,
it was like
a lot of those are fake.
Yeah,
but
I
but
imagine there would be,
just
but
like
is
I
that-
bought a farm and I grew chickens and this is how I grew my tomatoes, and,
Yeah.
and it's like, man, those videos get so many freaking views, and I'm telling you, most of them, I mean, in general, most views anywhere from city folks. That's where population centers are. But so many of those views are from people in the city who say to themselves after they watch them, man, what I would do to do something like this. And some of them take the leap. But the thing is there's no go-between that I've seen in terms of like product market fit, where I watch this video, I want to live that life. How do I do it? Just for like a week, just to see what it's like, to see if it's for me.
Yeah.
Right. And there are other people that put on these little sovereignty workshops and classes, but they're yeah. I mean, you've probably seen them. They're very expensive, because events are expensive and to find space is expensive. But there's got to be a way to crack the code to give people a feeling of what that life is like before they, make the leap fully.
Yeah. No, I think you'll work
I'll figure
it
it
out.
out. I'll figure it out.
Okay, let's change gears massively.
Yeah.
Doing a lightning round. I do this with most interviewees.
Just do it.
Okay, so first things that comes into your head. So can pineapple go on a pizza?
Yes. 100%. Love it. Love sweet with salty.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. That's definitely making a little montage.
Yeah.
What's your Bitcoin price prediction for 2025?
Oh, geez. Last time I made a price prediction, I had to eat 2 Carolina Reaper peppers. So as long as we don't bet on this.
I think I watched that. Yeah.
Okay. 2025, again, I'm so bearish, I guess. 160.
160?
Yeah, 160.
I mean, I would go a little bit lower, to be honest. I just
Yeah.
don't see this thing ripping.
Okay. There we go. 2 bears in a building. There we go.
Yeah, but eating Carolina Reaper peppers?
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do
Okay.
that.
If you could say something to Satoshi, what would you say to him? Or what would you do to him?
That's a hard lightning round question. I don't want to blow this.
First thing that comes to your head, man.
I hope you're enjoying your time away from civilization.
Very nice. Bits, sats, or bitcoins?
Sats, come on.
Okay, fair enough. What's one thing Bitcoiners need to do more of?
Make more content.
Make more content. I thought you were going to say
A lot of
homestay.
charismatic people here who I say, oh, you should film yourself. They're like, what, really? It's like, I just need to be a talent scout, I think. There's too many of us out here. Like, I mean, you meet them all the time. Killer, amazing people.
Yes.
Right? And they're just like too shy to get started.
Yeah, but then I'm also like, I can make a story about you. And I'm like,
Yeah,
two birds,
fair.
one stone. Yeah.
I like more competition. I don't think we have enough competition, Joe.
That's true. That's
We need
so
more.
true.
We need more.
And it's annoying. It's not annoying, but
Iron sharpens iron.
yeah. And yeah, it's true. In this tiny niche space, there should be more people. We get a lot of people that come in and do Bitcoin content, and then a year later they do other stuff.
Too
Like,
many authors, too many podcasters.
Yes.
Those guys need to diversify, start doing shorts. Like the documentaries, I
They
get
do
it. They're
do shorts.
expensive.
They're
take a
just
while.
sitting. They're doing what we're doing now, which is like sitting in a chair and being like,
Well, that's just clipped up. That's just clipped up podcast. Doesn't
Yeah.
count. I'm talking about distill your thoughts in a 60 concise seconds. Nail it.
okay, like actual proper scripted shorts. Okay.
Yeah, or
fine.
do some just do funny stuff. Carl and Walker. I mean, come on. Are you telling me there's only like 2 funny people in Bitcoin? Get out of here.
No.
Get out of here. I know there's
Yeah.
some funny mofos around.
I mean, I
haven't-
think like Giacomo Zucco could enter the Bitcoin content creation world and just blow us all out the water.
I
He's
think
just
so.
so creative and
I
funny.
think so. Anyways, I derailed that one, but
No, but it's true. I
Yeah.
mean, someone came up to me at a conference in Kenya and said, "Hey, man, I bought the same camera as you." And I was like, "Why?" And he was like, "Oh, because I watched your content and like you inspired me to go and do this." And I was like, "That's the most amazing thing ever." And he was
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, I'm now doing my content in my own language in I can't remember which country it was." But it's like
and
somewhere
don't
in
even
West Africa.
talk to me about other languages. Like we don't have enough people in English. I mean, there's nothing in the other languages.
Yeah.
Like you can be a big fish in a super small pool that only gets bigger if you just start now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's true. But yeah, we get a lot of content creators that do start making Bitcoin content and then go do other stuff. Like Carlin Walker is an example. Max DeMarco is an example. I've forgotten his name. The English guy. He lived on the Isle of Man for a bit. He's now doing philosophy content. But he was doing
Angelo?
Angelo.
Angelo's
Yes.
crushing it right now.
But
Yeah.
with philosophy content, which is cool and great
Yeah.
and all that. But he was a brilliant Bitcoin content creator.
Oh, he'll be
so
back.
Do you think so?
Angelo, if you're watching this, I know you'll be back.
He
I know you'll
definitely
be
doesn't
back.
watch this. He's
I
too
know
busy.
you'll be back.
He's
It's
too busy
inevitable.
consuming every piece of
Bitcoin's
religious text ever.
claws, they get into you and you'll find your way back.
It's like I thought Max would come back as well, and maybe he is. Maybe they're in building.
We're dropping too many names here.
Why is that a bad thing?
I think I want to talk to you about this because we were talking about it before.
Okay.
Part of the reason some people don't do it, or part of the reason that some people who do it end up stopping, burnout.
Yes, true.
Julian interviews Joe time. I don't know how this guy goes to 4 different conferences back to back to back. He's wearing the hat and the flag, and then you're playing guitar at night, and then you're doing your own show, and now you're kind of doing a podcast. What is going on? How do you handle all that?
I don't. That's the secret. I don't. No, I had a massive mental breakdown last year, like horrific. Never want to have that again. Like I was telling you before we came on air, I had to take a nap today, and I was just trying to settle that inner chatter and trying to tone down those thoughts. And it's really, really hard because when I'm here in El Salvador as well, I'm like content. Like I'm also just asking like, what is going on with this country right now?
Yeah.
I went to Mama Rosa, the Papusa lady. I had a little interview with her, and I was supposed to just be having lunch. And then on the way back, I was like, oh, there are a lot of trucks going along here, like an insane amount. Like it's a great visual metaphor to explain how this country is building. So I spent like 20 minutes just filming that. Yeah. And then on the way back to the gate thing, the pizza guy was there, and I was like, oh, I should have a quick conversation with him. And so when you're in the content creation framework, you cannot switch off at all. And then you've got to do the stage stuff, and then people expect stuff of you too. And actually, there's a question I wanted to bounce back at you on this: is that we socialize within a world in which we also want to make content, and that's like relatively normal. But it's not like we're profiting off it, because I think in a way we're actually giving back to this community. But then there's also this expectation that you are a content creator, you are supposed to do stuff and supposed to act in a certain way, and you can never just chill out with people. Like we're chilling out together right now, but because we're making content. But it's the only way that we realized we could make content together. Yeah. The only way we realized we could hang out together. I was like, oh, this is the way, because you messaged me, like we haven't had one-on-one time, well, you said yesterday, and I was like, we do need to do that. And I thought, okay, well, this is the best way to do it.
Yeah.
But isn't that such an awful trap?
What it is you go somewhere, and usually it's because one project is getting paid for by a sponsor, and then you realize, oh, I'm in the presence of all sorts of other people. So it's not just 2 birds with one stone, it's like 8 birds with one stone.
Yeah, true.
And it compounds, and you go in with this 2 bird one stone mentality, it turns into 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And it's just hard to say no. Bitcoiners are really fascinating film subjects. I mean, you come from the world of journalism, where you just stand somewhere and sometimes magic just happens. People just show up to your lap, and other times you have to go out and seek them and hunt them down and stalk them. But Bitcoin's one of those places where the stories they're just in your lap all the time, right? And you don't have, there are really cool ones you want to end up chasing, those kind of grander scale ideas and certain big names you want to interview. But a lot of the times you just show up at these conferences, you get an opportunity, and you have an amazing story in your lap all of a sudden, and it feels like a crime not to take it and not to say yes. Yeah. And then you have this sort of inner FOMO about having to get it done, and then there's also this weird obligation and a sense of I owe it to this community as well. And then there's my own internal voice, which I know is a little bit negative, but ultimately I'm just trying to do more all the time, and that's exhausting. So I have to do better about it. I can't. Well, and here's the challenge, right? Creator burnout, because I've seen all sorts of YouTubers, they make videos about, this is how I dealt with creator burnout. This is what happened. This is blah, blah, blah. And the comments are so nice. They're like, oh, don't worry about us. We'll be here. We'll be here when you decide to come back. Take a break. You've deserved it. Guess what? YouTube decides when your audience is going to see the content. So if you take a break, your subscribers don't see the content. They might even click the bell icon. You take a 2-month hiatus, and YouTube says, I don't care if someone has commented on Joe's videos 1,000 times and has subscribed and watched every single one of his videos. I'll just decide one day to just not show you a new upload. Yeah. And so you have all these the followers are it's this toxic relationship between the algorithm and the creators and the viewers, where the viewers probably just want to watch your content whenever you have time to make it. Yes, eventually you will fall off someone's radar if you go for months without making content, but YouTube punishes you if you're a monthly content uploader, you upload once a month and you skip 1 month. It's as if you fell off the face of the earth, man. And
I've seen those videos.
It's brutal.
Yeah, I mean, thank God for Nostr, right? At least there you can have a core audience that is there and
follows you wherever you go, sort of thing.
Yeah. It's something that I'm getting more and more grateful for and more in tune with. The only issue is that I don't know how to then package that up to be I'm not making enough money to expand quickly, and I know that I need more sponsors all the time. And so there's always that thing of how do I show a sponsor this one got zapped 30,000 sats, and this one got 2,000, and this one got 100,000, and they don't care.
The problem is with the decentralized platforms, we don't own our communities, right?
Yeah.
YouTube owns the community, and YouTube can decide how you frequent them. Now you can sell, $5 for my Discord or Telegram, and I think that's the way a lot of creators are moving, is selling these private groups. The challenge is economically. Look, when you watch YouTube, how many people do you basically watch? Pareto principle: 80% of your watch time is like the same 4 creators or 5 creators.
Yeah,
and
I think
then,
you can name them. Yeah.
20% is random stuff. It's just hard to figure out what that is as a creator. Like, which one of your viewers are you taking up, 80% of their watch time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus, are you just one of those ones that just pops up randomly every like 2nd or 5th video on?
Yeah.
And so we're trying to figure that out too. And that was honestly a big impetus for doing Getbased. Is I thought, look, I can only put out so much as like a single creator, even if I bankrolled, editors and new shows and all this stuff. I still have to be able to wake up in the morning and go on camera. And I was thinking, well, what I needed to do is find, 2 other like-minded people, because I think a trio is sort of the better way to do it. Duo would probably work too. But a trio is like, there's a nice rounding out there where we have, Isabella, female voice, relentless person. We got Adam, super personable, super wise, has been in this industry forever. And we have me, the zany one, who's always doing different ideas. And so far, I feel like it's working because...
That's your perception of what you are. What did they say? What do they say?
Well, they actually think I'm like the most chill one of all of them. I think my temperament is more grounded. Like I'm a bit quieter than they are.
Yeah.
But I have the weirdest ideas out of the 3 of them, by far. I'm sorry, Isabella, Adam. You guys are too normal. Like I do the weird crap that no one else is going to do. But it's great. And I think that it's starting that there's an appetite for people to watch all 3 of our content together. Even though we're all doing our separate shows, there's this cohesion of awakening the sovereign individual that kind of runs through all the content.
Okay.
Issa does it by being relentless and, paving her way with the circular economy project. Adam is a very rigorous first principles guy, and you need those first principles to really be a sovereign individual. And I'm on the cutting edge of experimenting and trying to look at this emerging world as we have it, with all the new technologies and Bitcoin around the world
and bugs.
on a ground level. And so from my perspective, I don't want to rest my laurels, but I think it's coming together. Even though all of our content's very different, it's coming together. And that, going back to the community thing, it's like people need a rallying cry to get around if you want them to pay $5 a month. You have to know what your brand is. And if you're not willing to figure out what that core messaging is, then you probably will be stuck with the audience that YouTube prescribes to you,
Yeah. I mean, it's fundamentally, what are you selling?
You need to get those core 100 or 1,000 fans, and those will only come around you if you have like a very central thesis to your content. I've kind of realized.
Yeah, that's the... what's the Patreon?
Yeah.
Did you watch his talk? The Patreon founder, he did it at one of the tech summits recently.
What's that guy's name? Jack something or other?
Yeah. Anyway, that's going to be awful to listen to. So
I'll give you like quick example. You're in journalism. The 2 biggest YouTuber Patreon accounts, CoffeeZilla, Johnny Harris. Why? Because they also crowdsource a lot of their work, and people love.
Dude,
I'm
to starting to do this. I'm doing timestamps crowdsourcing.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 10,000 sats to whoever does the timestamps or chapters, whatever you want to call it, on a podcast. I'll do it for this one, and you'll see it. And I think someone will do it. I'm confident that someone will want the 10,000 sats and will want also, I hope, to help me in doing this as well, because I've done all the AIs, done all, like, I've considered hiring someone. It's so expensive to do it, and I'm like, well, I think 10,000 sats is reasonable to ask for timestamps.
You know how developers have bug bounties? You should have a fact bounty. You ever get a fact wrong? There's a bounty for you.
Oh, that's brilliant. That is really good. Yeah. Just all those sorts of things. I have done lots of, like, the person that commented first, they did it on a couple of videos. That was also when I was like, I have a community. Someone wrote first on a video. It was a great day.
Yeah.
And I replied, and I was like, yo, what's your NPub, or like, what's your Lightning address? But the annoying thing is that obviously YouTube censors those.
Yeah.
How do you deal with criticism and the hate? And do you get criticism and stuff? Really?
Honestly, I love all the people who appreciate our videos and say, wow, this was great, good work, awesome video. The best comments are the ones where people just drop an essay about how much they hate it. Because either I pulled an emotion out of them, or...
So it's you reading a lot of those, or is it Adam, or is it...
I read all the comments.
Okay, right.
I'm the all-seeing comment watcher.
Oh, great.
People go... Think about this. How often do you comment? I mean, you're awesome. You comment on all our videos just because you're a super awesome guy.
No, I don't comment on Adam's. I watch Adam's 1 in 5 probably.
Okay.
But oftentimes it's because I do know what he's talking about, and I'm like,
Yeah.
Just,
That's
you know,
okay. Sorry, Adam.
yeah.
But
No, I like Adam a lot.
I'll
Like,
give you an
he's a great
example.
dude, but, yeah.
I rarely comment on YouTube videos. I have to be very compelled, and I almost use comments on YouTube videos as bookmarks as well. It's like if
Interesting.
I really loved a creator's video and they don't have a big following, I'll make sure to go out of my way to comment about, wow, this is amazing. You're going places. Like, that's when I have to be really compelled to leave a comment.
Okay.
And so I try and put myself in other people's shoes. I feel like you really have to move people in order to get comments on things.
Yeah.
And you might move someone negatively, and that's okay. You know, maybe it's good that they're channeling their negative energy towards you versus someone else.
Also, it's Bitcoiners leaving comments, and Bitcoiners love it when things are right and hate it when things are wrong. And
Yeah.
so they are incredibly compelled to right a wrong. And
Yeah.
I find that a lot. I mean, even on this comment comes to mind. It was on your, frankly amazing, by the way, documentary about the Federal Reserve. And someone was like, someone has actually misquoted Jefferson, and it's like it's some trope that's been going around that it's actually wrong. And I was like, wow, that guy's really gone out of his way to be like, I'm just going to correct this.
Yeah.
I'm going to ignore the entirety of this 25-minute documentary, which clearly these people have put a lot of effort into, and just focus on that one error. And yet it got engagement. It probably got the conversation going.
It gets my, number one, those comments get my interest every time.
Yep.
Right. So if you want the interest of me, you got it. Congrats. The other thing is that it's like you paid a lot of attention, like word for word, to be able to even pick up on something like that. Right.
Yeah.
Now you'll have people who drop those flame comments, ignore those. Right. But people who write essay long comments, like they care.
Yeah.
There's not much more to it. They care, and that's awesome. Like, all you really want to do is you want to make stuff that, in the world of scrolling and feeling numb while you're viewing content, to make someone go out of their way to type a message out that long, 300, 400 words, is it's a lot of work. Whether they like the content or not, like, it moved them. It made them stop their day and think about what they had just watched, right?
Mm-hmm. God, I hope they're not just AI bots that are getting smarter and smarter.
I don't think so.
But we've just discussed good criticism, useful criticism. What do you do with the actual bad criticism, the trolling, do you get that? Like, I can show you some nasty shit, and it's unpleasant.
The criticism I care most about is if two people or more kind of make the same remark on the content. Generally, it'll mean either I got a fact wrong, or I presented something in maybe a disingenuous or not great way. And I pay attention to those comments, and I guess I wouldn't call those trolling necessarily. Mm-hmm. The trolling comments, I just ignore them. Honestly, worse than the trolling comments are the spam, buy my crypto
Yeah,
comments.
but you just get very quick at muting that specific word and then remove them from the channel.
They
Like,
make
I've got a whole
new
list of
coins.
them.
This is the problem with crypto, is they make new coins.
Yeah.
X80X1 coin.
Well, it's not the new coins, it's the new name.
Or
it's
Miss
always like,
Miss like
Isabel Mary,
Ramona
yeah.
Rodriguez recommended this to me, and I made 5,000 a week. It's like, what word do you even mute in that? Like,
Ramona Rodriguez. Honestly, they go away.
Yeah.
I've got the whole list. I can share the list with you. It's actually like,
Yeah.
I'm thinking of finding a way
the
to
macro block words, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It's okay. So there's a delineation here. The documentaries, I don't really deal with a lot of those comments. The shorts, because they do get more views, I got a whole bunch of comments on. I like to take craps on communism and stuff like that, and I have some people. But here's the great thing: for some reason on the shorts, people are compelled to start flame wars on them. On YouTube, I guess someone drops a comment and it feels like I'm the only one who really reads it. And I don't know if other people read it, but when you go into shorts comment sections, people are buzzing, right?
Okay.
And that's why sometimes when you have YouTube shorts, it'll say the average view time is 105%. And you're like, how is it 105%? It's only one video.
Loop so many times.
Because it's looping in the background because some nerds is writing a comment to someone else to disagree with them, right? Or to like them or to write something funny. And I think that's really interesting. And I think that's in general why shorts, the algorithm loves shorts that are just looping in the background,
Oh, dude, a human somewhere has told the algorithm, push shorts as hard as you can. I will constantly tap the three dots and say, I don't want to see more shorts on my channel. Like
I was doing that, but
It
I would
still
be
does
fine
it.
for a week, and then they'd start back up again on YouTube.
And it's awful. And then you realize, where's 3 minutes gone?
Yeah, gone.
And you're like,
Yeah.
okay.
Let me ask you, how do you deal with it? Because you are... Here's the thing. If I get a fact wrong, it's not a death blow to me. I don't know if it is for you, because you have... I want to say, in terms of your journalistic integrity, you like to present a lot more unbiased views. I like to create an emotional narrative, and so I will definitely omit facts about my experience somewhere. if it just feels like a distraction from the main feeling I want to convey to someone, right?
Spoken like a true politician there.
Well, a little bit, right? But it's like, look, if I really genuinely loved a place, but I filmed some stuff that was just kind of stupid and distracting, it's like, I'm not going to put it in the cut. It just doesn't really serve, and it kind of just derails, I think, the feeling from the audience. I want them to feel, you know, a full circle. I don't want them to feel like there's little side quests here and there. But that's because I have a very specific outcome of product I want. Like, I want this thing to feel like a complete story circle. You're going in and you're doing things that don't necessarily have a very clear beginning, middle, end. You're going in and you're feeling things out in real time, and they go in different directions. And so I kind of wonder, like, how do you deal with criticism on that stuff? Because it's less, I guess, I don't want to say your stuff's not art, but I feel like I maybe view my stuff as more of like they're movies when I put them out, more than they are documentaries sometimes.
No, I totally agree. And a lot of, like, you know, the El Salvador content I wanted to do, I came here with this idea in mind, and it completely switched when the IMF made their, like, you know, law repeal, whatever you want to call it. And so, like, the key thing is to care. Like, I genuinely care about the facts and things I put out and want them to be as accurate as humanly possible. The other thing is that I am human, so at some point I am going to make mistakes, and I have made mistakes about stuff in the past, but I'm genuinely trying as best I can to do good Bitcoin journalism. The other thing to bear in mind is that I am a Bitcoin advocate, so it is Bitcoin advocacy journalism, so there's always going to be a slight skew towards, you know, being pro-Bitcoin, but I'm also trying to challenge that Bitcoin assumption, because I think we all should. I think we should all try to work out ways in which Bitcoin is going to go to zero, and we should all try to attack Bitcoin and point where our mishaps are, because otherwise we end up in this bizarre, I think we actually have fallen into this trap quite a few times already as a community. We think we get lost in this world of toxic positivity, and that's communism. That's literally what happens in communist states. That happens in Cuba to this day. People can't talk about their marital issues to their friends because they're worried that, you know, someone in the, you know, spy ring is going to then report that to someone higher up, and it's going to, you know, spread out like that. So we pretend that everything is rosy in Bitcoin country, or we pretend that, oh no, it's absolutely fine that the on-chain fees are 100, 200 pounds or whatever it is, without actually discussing why does it matter? Like, who does it matter for? And, you know, all the usual questions that you should be asking. But I think to the point about actual criticism, as soon as someone shows me they're a bad actor, it's mute or block. I'm getting really quick to do that now, because I've wasted a lot of brain cells and a lot of emotion on trying to reason with people who I didn't realize were, for example, a Bcasher, or they just hate me because I've given out sats on a wallet of Satoshi thing, which is just like so annoying. That's,
you know what, when I see Bitcoin Twitter, I see that as like our biggest weakness, and that's a muscle to develop, is when to give someone your time, your valuable time and attention. As here's an educational moment versus are they just here to get a rise out of you? And
they're getting a rise out of you for something completely unrelated. Like someone did it the other day where they like commented something like a little bit nasty, but not that nasty. And like 3 comments later, it's because I'd pissed them off by associating with someone that they didn't like before. And I was like, oh dude, like you've got too much spare time in your hands. Like just leave me alone, you know? And
okay, hot take time. Are you ready for this?
Sure.
Okay. You know how everyone chirps, you know, Ripple and Greenpeace for spending $5 million on their anti-Bitcoin campaign?
Change the code, baby.
Money well spent. You couldn't generate that amount of press and the amount of time that they sucked out of Bitcoiners for $5 million in any other context. The amount of brain power that I saw from academics in this space, the environmental crew, put into debunking this stuff, and maybe it's a good exercise. Maybe that piece will serve some type of like future value. In the here and now, from the way that I've read them, it's like, this is a response to Greenpeace's claims on this, right? Guess what? No one outside the Bitcoin echo chamber cares. It's falling on your debunking or your memeing or whatever about Greenpeace. It's all falling on deaf ears. Meanwhile, every single time that you comment or you write something on that, it's getting their post boosted. Now I see, oh yeah, it's got 500 comments and 40 likes. It means that their campaign failed. No, it doesn't. Look at the amount of impressions, right? There's going to be somebody who follows a Bitcoin maxi, but they're not real Bitcoiners, and they're going to end up going down this Greenpeace rabbit hole, and they're going to learn some stuff, and they're going to have their opinion changed, and that's, you know, that's their fault if they believe the nonsense. But if we're talking about an ROI in terms of the amount of impressions and views and minds changed for $5 million, I think that Greenpeace probably got more than what they wanted out of that campaign. And the proof will be if anything like that gets launched again. And in my opinion, it already has in some way with the whole SBR and Ripple and all this stuff. Like, they'll spend it again because there's probably positive ROI on it. Not just because they have like an infinite war chest, but because it just you make money with outrage, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look at Nouriel Roubini, right? Like the guy's showing up and debating Bitcoiners. Like, guess what? Somebody's still paying for his flights and his speaking fee to be a part of these things, right? And Bitcoiners, like, we just love taking the bait on things. It's just easy to get us riled up.
Well, they hate to
we gotta,
see
you
these
gotta
wrongs.
work on the muscle, right? You
They
don't want to give them attention. That's how you win.
Yeah.
Right?
No, that's true. I think, muting quicker. But yeah, it's that thing of Bitcoiners hate it when things aren't right. They hate it when the node isn't synced and when, I don't know, the block height is an odd number or whatever it is. And they have to, as you say, take the bait. But I think there's also a case to be made for Bitcoiners being incredibly good at trashing things like fiat and inaccuracies, but also Bitcoiners trashing other Bitcoiners. It's like a blood sport within this space of taking swipes at people and bringing people down, as opposed to focusing on the problem and trying to address that.
You've got a good story about that because you went to a crypto conference and now you have all the Ordinal bros after you.
Oh yeah, and the crypto people as well.
Tell me a little bit about that. Have you talked much about, like, how is that? Like, I looked at Udi's comment and they were just like, look at this stupid British dude.
But the thing is, the worst thing he could do is call me a dork.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, like, I'm okay being a dork. Like, I'm fine with that. That was really odd. And also, I've muted and blocked him for a long time. Like, I've hung out with him personally, and I've learned that I wouldn't do this conversation with him sat across the table because he's just a dickhead, like, just one of those people.
Just bad faith arguments from him all the time.
Yeah, but also just. I know some Bitcoiners that are just massive dickheads as well, and he's just one of them. You're like, I don't want to spend my time with this person in any shape or form. But yeah, so someone sent me this message to a muted and blocked account, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to check it. And then someone else sent me the message, and someone else sent the message, and I was like, okay, that's the same URL. Click to see the comment. I was like, oh my god, it's fucking Udi. But the worst part was that the best part rather, was that he'd quote tweeted the original video to his, I don't know how many thousand followers. And I was like, well, thanks for engagement, mate. Cheers.
Boom.
Yeah.
Reverse effect working for you. You're the Greenpeace in this situation.
And also I was like, I was compelled to comment and I actually reached out to, Gandalf. He's a mate of mine, but he's becoming increasingly like a mentor figure. He's just a very wise dude. And and I messaged him, I was like, yo, like, what do you make of this kind of thing? And we had a back and forth. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm just going to leave it. I don't care for this guy. I don't care for his opinion. And it's doing what I think. And meanwhile, people were still DMing me, being like, oh, look at Udi saying this.
Okay, you want the best response to all this stuff? Love me or hate me, you watched. That's all you could do.
Yeah. I mean,
that's the response.
Yeah. There is a Joe 2 years ago who would have gone out of his way to correct all that nonsense and be like, I didn't actually get a free, like, I was invited to go, I didn't get the free ticket, all this crap that like was the accusations, and I would correct them, and I was like, no, life is short. I think what I'm doing is important and useful, and I've had so many people thank me and say, that is the video I wanted to share to my no corner friends and show this is the rigged system you're going against. However, I'm now going through, I mean, you probably do this with your own documentaries, there are so many draft interviews that never make it to this sort of setting, like a podcast setting, that I'm like, I want to put them on a separate channel. Yeah. So I'm now going through all those interviews, and because with the benefit of hindsight and the benefit of seeing what this crypto video has done, I'm now going through and making sure that, like, did I go up to these people and say, hey, I'm a Bitcoin journalist, I used to work for Cointelegraph. Have I made sure that I didn't lie or expand the truth in any way? Because I don't want there to be any room for me being caught out. But I'm confident I haven't. I mean, I'm on like the third interview now. But there's this worry of, okay, because the original video did quite well, will people now be trying to take aim at me to catch me out on anything? And that's another thing that sucks as a journalist in this space, because there's no support network, there's no system in place to help people do actual journalism. So there are no actual journalists. Like, there are the occasional CoinDesk, the CoinDesk scoop of SBF and FTX and all that. Like, that was a brilliant piece of journalism that led to them effectively imploding, but like, they did sound the alarm in advance. But I remember being at Cointelegraph and knowing that an exchange was insolvent and being desperate to write about it. And the managing editor at the time was like, well, you need to double check that they're insolvent. I was like, are you kidding me? I've got 3 sources. Like, what do you want? I've got like a guy that's very respected in the crypto community telling me this. I've got another couple of people talking to me about this. I was like, okay, I'll ring the CEO. So I ring the CEO, literally ring him, and I say, hi, I'm Joe at Cointelegraph. Is your exchange insolvent? And he was like, no, of course not. I was like, great, okay. Go back to my editor. And I'm like, he says they're insolvent. No shit, Sherlock. And so I was like, I'm going to write this story anyway. And in the 20 minutes it took me to finish writing that article, the exchange put out a tweet. Dear customers, we're sorry to inform you that I shit you not.
Oh my God.
And so I put, as a headline, it's still on the internet. Like, CEO of insolvent exchange says funds are not insolvent. So like the state of crypto journalism is just, it's horrific.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do come into it. I came into this space as a journalist already, with that training and that sense of professionalism, and I was shocked at I was working at Tap Radar for a bit, and people would come in and they'd say, "Have you finished that piece yet?" And I was doing commercial content as well as some journalism, but it was mostly commercial stuff. And they were like, "Oh, have you finished that piece yet?" And I was like, "No." And they're like, "Oh, well, to be honest, I thought the project would have rugged by now anyway." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Like, I'm writing bollocks about these projects that you know are going to rug one day, and you expect me to put it out there? Like, I'm done." Like, a couple of days later, I resigned. So yeah, it's a shit show of journalism, which is why we need to do more.
What's a first principle stance of, like, in a free market system, what's the incentive for there to be good journalism? Like, how do these people get paid?
It's why you need these big backers. But then with those big backers, like Plan B Network, like obviously it is way up the ladder. It's owned by Tether, right? As Tether owns a lot of these things, and so without that, that would not give me the freedom to explore these things. On top of that, they've just let me go. They just said, like, here's your money, or Bitcoin rather, here's your Bitcoin, go do Bitcoin journalism.
Yeah.
Like, how brilliant is that? And they trust me, they trust what I'm doing and putting out there. And like, dude, like some of the tinfoil hatted stuff in the Bitcoin space is so ridiculous, and it's so wrong and so misinformed, and it's so many people sitting behind a keyboard, never actually meeting people face to face, never actually speaking to primary sources, and never actually putting two and two together and being like, oh, actually, what I've said does not make sense at all, because all I've done is read a couple of weird articles that link some financial statements of this thing.
Yeah.
And I find it really, really infuriating. Like, there are some people that do this, but most of our journalists in the Bitcoin space, or crypto space particularly, are sat in a developed country writing stuff about stuff they saw online.
Yeah. Well, you know what the craziest part about all this too is when you look at the biggest content creators, they rely on journalists to make their content.
Yeah.
Half the content, and like, I'm privy to this as well because we have a show which is a commentary channel. Half the content sometimes is just person A reacts to another journalist's work and gives, like, you know, side-by-side commentary on it. It's like, okay, what happens if those people that make the primary content cease to exist, right? What are you going to react to then, right? Podcasts, I guess. Two people shooting the shit.
I had Nifty, Lisa and Jesse react to my podcast of John Carvalho, and I rewatched the whole thing. Yeah, it was so good. But on the reaction thing, have you had videos?
But you know what that reminds me of? You know how people say, oh, the problem with the LLMs is eventually they're just going to start using their own content as a reference, and it's just going to be this infinite loop of garbage. They say, oh, problem with LLMs is like, well, if there's not if the internet becomes 90% AI written, then the AI is referencing its own work, and then the content will just distill into just amorphous garbage. Yeah. The same thing is going to happen if there's no mechanism in place for journalists to actually do work profitably, right? And so I haven't figured out, that's another giant challenge we have to figure out as we move to a free market economy, is like, what free market incentive is there for journalists to do really good work? Because right now, we are very comfortable in our fiat world getting all this stuff for free, right? And that's got to break if we want good.
Free.
No, it is, right? But like, the average end user is only paying in their, privacy, and that's, hard to quantify, right?
Yeah.
But man, I think in a Bitcoinized world, you're going to have to convince a lot of people to do value for value, and they might not want to, but eventually that might be the only way that they get really good journalism in the future.
Especially if we're speaking at scale. Lola Leitz, do you follow her work on?
No.
She absolutely rinsed me 4 years ago because I took a selfie at a conference, and she's a big privacy advocate.
Yeah.
And whatever, but she does amazing scoops and investigations, that kind of stuff. And her stuff on Nostr, I zap it generously, but it's not as generous as an Odell or a Jack or whatever.
Yeah.
And I am seeing that kind of stuff is doing relatively well. And I've had pieces zapped on Nostr that have got up to 150,000 sats. Yeah. Which is obviously one fraction of the cost of the work.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it is, if I compare it to where it was last year, it is better. The only issue with Nostr, of course, is that I can't give my account to someone else to also help me manage it. With YouTube Studio, you have, I guess, those two.
You have brand accounts, right? I think there's a way to do that within Nostr. You can have something where...
But then it's your NSEC. It's gone, right?
I think there's some mechanism in Nostr to have something like a multi-sig, where basically you have someone else, you can draft a post. They're yes, you just get to go in and review it, or you can have some automated bot that kind of allows like that second signature to pop up.
Okay.
Problem is you can't delete on Nostr. I'm not keen on that, honestly.
Yeah. Also, like, we make mistakes, and sometimes they should be.
If you need to correct your work, you're
Yeah.
like you're spamming the chain. Like,
Also, there's a fear of, like, have I just uploaded a picture of like a random selfie rather than like the thing I wanted to upload?
Yeah.
I've had that a couple
Well,
of
you just
times.
have to think so hard before you post, which is the problem, because you can't have this effervescent flow of ideas if you can't backtrack on some of the ideas, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you're constantly filtering yourself to make sure that you don't put on something that gives up your privacy or misstates a fact, then you're probably just not going to use it as much, which kind of has problems with network effects, honestly.
Yeah.
So.
No, I mean, I love it, but then I'm also aware of a lot of these limitations. Let's wrap up, because I know that you've got stuff to do. You've got to go build Getbased. So you asked me the other day, what piece of content am I most proud of?
Yeah.
What piece of content are you most proud of?
That's a good question.
And I'll buy you time. Mine was the El Salvador video, but I can't say the reasons why I'm proud of it.
Why not?
I can't talk about it publicly.
The El Salvador one, are you talking about the one that you did
It was originally with Cointelegraph.
That was around the time you were here with Max when you did that one, yeah? Or Max did one around the same time, I remember, on his channel.
Oh, did I say El Salvador? I meant Cuba. Sorry, I meant Cuba. Sorry, I've had a total brain fog there.
Okay.
The Cuba piece is the one I'm
the-
most proud
yeah.
of, because, and I can't talk about why it is,
that's tricky.
but it's really, really happy reasons, and I'm really proud of those reasons. And yeah. So what about you?
Content that I'm most proud of. It changes. I am really proud of the Jekyll Island doc a lot lately, because I think that was something where that was a story I wanted to tell for a very long time, and I couldn't figure out how to get it dense enough and interesting enough to a wider audience that would appreciate it. And that was a mixture of, number one, let's go there so it feels real rather than me reading out of a book and it's all AI images. We did put in some AI art to try and tell the story a bit better.
Was those the whirlpool that effects and the sort of the Oppenheimer triggers? That was an Oppenheimer reference, wasn't it?
Yeah, there's some neat
cool.
Oppenheimer references in there, right?
Nice.
Like that's the bomb they dropped on the world is the Fed. But
Cool.
the thing that I really loved with that whole thing was it was decentralized storytelling. Having multiple different narrators telling the story, like Ian opens it up, and then I do the voiceovers, and then you have Peruvian Bull doing a bunch of them, and then there's sections where it's just cross-cutting between us, sort of doing the play-by-play.
And Isa's doing a husky, like, I just smoked 20 cigarettes, then did a voiceover.
Poor Isa, she was at the Bitcoin conference hosting stuff, you know. And
I feel her pain.
She got winded on that one, but
yeah.
It was cool because that's something that's made in the edit. I told everyone, look, I want you all to get very familiar with the story, and this is going to be a walking podcast in the place where it all went down.
Okay.
And they were all on board for it, and I think a lot of us, when we were shooting that, we were thinking, like, is the whole thing going to work? And then at the last day, there's a lot of stuff on the beach there where I just said, I want you to get into just, you know, why this stuff sucks. Like, what is the soul-searching reason that fiat money is so toxic for the world? Like, how does it affect and crush the spirit? And is this not a financial war, but really a spiritual war? And that was sort of the prompt. And those guys are just amazing. They just went off with it, and we thought, okay, how do we make this not a podcast? And it was one-on-ones, side-by-side walking, intercut with some cool B-roll of the island. There's all these little visual metaphors, but I love the way that turned out. And the number one comment I've gotten on it in terms of criticism is that it was too short. They're like, you skipped so much of this story, right? And that's probably the best comment I could actually get, because that means that I left people wanting more, and that the people who were interested are going to likely go deeper down that rabbit hole with the real book and with other supplementary podcasts. But it was that it's kind of the appetizer to awakening people, and I thought it just turned out really awesome. And Chris, the guy who edited the whole thing, like, the guy is full of ideas, amazing visual effects artist, and yeah, super proud of the way that one turned out. I want to do more documentaries like that take these complex long tomes and pieces of history and sort of make them more cinematic and more engaging and personable. We definitely want to do some stuff on Freemasonry in the future and why the dollar bill has a triangle or a pyramid with a big eye on it, and what that means. But Yeah, there's so much more in that style I want to pursue. Those ones are just they're behemoth edits. Like you've probably done something like that just went off the rails, and that one went from this is a pretty simple edit to let's go crazy with it. You know?
Dude, it's a full-on I mean, that was the one that I think I actually commented saying this is art.
Yeah,
and it is.
It was super fun. And,
yeah, it's
I'm so blessed to be around talented people that can take my disorganized thoughts and turn them into something like that. And yeah, super proud of the way that one turned out. I want to teach other people how to make stuff like that too, man. There's people in this space that are kind of closed books, and they think what they have in terms of storytelling or how they do their journalism or how they teach and write, they think that if they teach other people how they get to the conclusions that they've arrived to, that they're going to steal that and do it better or something, and they worry about their own careers. And I think like the whole ethos of Bitcoin is that we're open source. So we should constantly be sharing knowledge. There's nothing that I've learned in creating Getbased that I inevitably won't end up talking about, from the entrepreneurial side to the creative side to the interpersonal relationships to the mistakes I've made to the successes I've made. Inevitably, in the right place in the right time, all this stuff is going to come out. And I think that as creative people and entrepreneurs, it benefits us to really share the tricks of our trade, because the more competition we have, the better. It means more content. It means more breaking outside this bubble. The more that we think we got to own certain monopolies in the types of content and stuff that we do, it might feel good for the ego, but it will destroy the soul in the long term. And so I implore all creators, number one, to try and onboard and teach as many other people to become creators that are willing to listen. And number two, once you get into this space, if you have a breakthrough on something, like share it with someone else.
Yeah, and steal like an artist, right?
Steal. It's open source, right? That's what we're trying to do. You can open source education. You can open source personal branding as well as code.
I called it an Oppenheimer reference, but it wasn't. It was an Oppenheimer theft.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We
And
took clips from it.
Yeah.
You're gonna sue me, Warner Brothers? Like I flipped the image, I zoomed it in. It's fair use. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
But
good.
me as a Brit who Jekyll Island, I'm like, what the hell's that? Who cares, right? I like the first couple of minutes I found were a bit dense because it's just like too intense, and then after that I was like, wow, these guys have just blown out of the water. It was incredible, and it was. Yeah, it's those kind of things that are tangentially interesting to like a Brit or a Central European or whatever.
Yeah.
You can make them riveting and be like, this is why it matters.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. And it's you've got a very special skill with that.
Thank you, man.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to teach more people.
Do it, man, do it.
Yeah.
Listen, your time is precious. It's the sun is going to be close to setting soon. Is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to cover, or anything that we should get across here, or should we wrap it up?
I don't know how many people watch your show, but I put out a call to anybody who watches other creators, because I watch all of Joe's videos. I watch all of Max's videos. All of us creators, we all love each other's work, and we all watch it, and we respect it. And I really want to put a call out to anybody watching these videos. If you've had even like a slight itch to make something, what can we do to empower you on it, right? Like what can we do as creators to empower you to start making stuff? Is it the editing that's expensive for you guys? Would you be interested in a Bitcoiner workshop on how Joe and I make scripts? I don't know what it is, but I know that there's so many charismatic people and people that I've interviewed in my documentaries who have a bunch of free time because they're Bitcoiners and they're doing well. And they've expressed wanting to get into it somehow, but they haven't been able to make the leap yet. And I'd love to just know from anyone from your audience or abroad, like, how do we do that? Because that's part of my mission. I want to get more people creating Bitcoin content that are creative people. You don't have to know how to operate the camera. You don't know how
to know shit.
You don't have to know shit. You just have to have cool ideas, right? Yeah. And filmmakers and editors will come, right? And I have a whole, resource of people that are savvy in writing and editing that also are Bitcoiners. And so I want to share that stuff with people. If there's anyone out there that's ever wanted to make content, like, please DM me. I don't know if Joe's inbox is open for that sort of stuff, but I want more competition in this space.
Yeah,
I love you, Joe, but like I want to be uncomfortable with the amount of documentaries like ours coming out, and I want to be pushed to step my game up quite a bit from where.
Yeah. No, I do too, and at the same time, talking about burnouts and creative stuff, I'm also like, fuck, like, well, at what point are we going to get a breather? Like next bear market?
Here's how we solve the burnout. We get all the creators once we have millions of them, and we all do ayahuasca on an island together, and then we're recovered. That's the way to do it.
I think those days for me are over. I think I'm trying to not drink again at the moment. Anyway, we can go on for hours. This has been Julian. You should subscribe to Getbased if you're not already. And thanks, mate. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
And also check out Julian's Plan B documentary if you haven't already. Plan B Network is a one-stop shop for all things Bitcoin education, and it's free. It's not really open source, but it's free. It's just an open to use website. And also thank you to Coin Corner. Coin Corner is a British Bitcoin exchange doing all things Bitcoin. I can't tell you to buy Bitcoin, although I really want you to because the FCA will come for me. But Coin Corner, check them out. Thank you so much, Coin Corner. Thank you, Plan B Network. And thank you to BitKit, my newest sponsor. BitKit is a Lightning wallet in your pocket that is fully non-custodial. Try out BitKit Wallet today. Just search for BitKit Wallet on your app store of choice. Do what you love and save in Bitcoin.